of the NDA.
Central Bank of Nigeria cautions Nigerians against fake investment schemes. Nigeria and African Union drum support for Okonjo-Iweala ahead of the selection of a new Director General for the World Trade Organization. President Muhammadu Buhari presents 2021 budget proposal to the National Assembly. The program is Business Express, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital, and I am Muplang Dakok. It's so good to have you always tuned to Business Express. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has dissociated itself from fraudulent messages and videos on social media requesting loan seekers and small business owners to apply for loans purportedly facilitated by the bank. The apex regulator, in a statement signed by its acting director corporate communications, Ositanwan Nisobi, stated that while there are several development finance intervention programs by the bank, it does not do so through direct interaction with prospective applicants, adding that there are clearly spelled out procedures for assessing CBN intervention funds, which are disbursed through participating financial institutions such as deposit money banks, development finance institutions, and microfinance banks. The bank advises Nigerians to disregard any video or text message proposing investment schemes or charging them fees on the pretext that their organizations are endorsed by CBN and therefore would guarantee easy access to CBN loans. CBN has neither appointed nor accredited any organization to serve as agent on its behalf for the purpose of investment or applying for intervention loans. A 13.08 trillion naira budget of economic recovery and resilience has been proposed for expenditure by the federal government for its services in the 2021 fiscal year. The budget is expected to accelerate the pace of the nation's economic recovery and diversification, enhance competitiveness, as well as ensure social inclusion. President Muhammadu Buhari presented the appropriation bill before the joint session of the National Assembly for consideration. He thanked Nigerians for their perseverance and continued support during these difficult times, saying, however, that his administration will remain unwavering in its commitment towards achieving a brighter future for everyone.
2021 remains focused on the completion of as many ongoing projects as possible. We have also made efforts to ensure equity in the distribution of projects and programs in the proposed budget. I will be providing the National Assembly a list of some of the most critical projects which we must work collectively to ensure they receive adequate funding. Until projects reach completion, they do not deliver the dividends of democracy that Nigerians rightly deserve. In view of many challenges confronting us, We must accelerate our economic recovery process, promote social inclusion, and strengthen the resilience of the economy.
The National Assembly pledged expeditious consideration and passage of the 2021 appropriation bill presented to a joint session of the National Assembly by President Muhammadu Buhari on Thursday. This is in tandem with the commitment of ensuring continuity of the January to December budget cycle.
For the first time, I'm hearing the president of the country say we are going to fix interest for small-scale industries. What does that imply? It means that the socio-economic activities and the economic small-scale industry will be encouraged.
We need to create an enabling environment for business to thrive. And for us to do that, infrastructure is key. Power is uppermost. And I thank God that he has placed power as a priority.
We need to look into the performance of the last budget. And we are now going to consider the proposal of the Mr. President. Then wherever we think is okay, we'll leave it the way it is. And wherever we think there's need for little adjustment, that is the purpose of the National Assembly there. We'll come together and put it there and then represent it back to the National Assembly.
The laying of the document is in fulfillment of constitutional provisions. Now, Senator Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi is the Deputy Chief Whip of the Senate. He joins me now to look at the road towards attaining a successful 2021 budget. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. So the coronavirus, we can say that it almost made a mess of the 2020 budget, such that the federal government had to revise it. With this 2021 proposal by the federal government, do you think it is such an ambitious proposal? Do you think it's very ambitious?
Well, yes, people are right to say it's ambitious. Okay. But is it a crime to have an ambition? I don't think it's a crime to have an ambition. Until you have an ambition, you don't work towards achieving anything. And I think the budget itself is titled Budget of Recovery and Resilience. And of course, in every ambition, you definitely have to have a focus or a target. And I think the target of the budget this time around is to go into a recovery. And the recovery is simply because we've been in recession due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, very strong economics have received hit far more than even our own. And I think that shows you also the resilience of our own people. And I think it is that resilience of our people that the president recognized in most of the pronouncements he has made, targeting on how to improve the welfare and security of the citizens.
Okay, now that the budget is with the legislators, what next?
Well, as it is, first let me say that in this night assembly, we had a resolve. Immediately we were inaugurated in 2019. And the resolve is to do things different and to try to leave some legacy. Okay. One of the legacy of the night assembly is returning the budget cycle to a January to December cycle. And I think we've successfully done that in 2019 when we passed the 2020 budget. And I want to assure you that even from the statements of the Senate President and the Right Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives, you can attest to the fact that we are committed to ensuring that that legacy becomes an institutional framework of the National Assembly, so that every year, with certainty, people can plan and say that, yes, the budget of the Federation of Nigeria will definitely come out, and implementation will begin from January and ends in December.
Okay. The President yesterday said that the 2021 budget will concentrate on completion of projects, rather than starting new projects.
Absolutely.
Is that the way to go?
Definitely, that is the way to go. Because if you look at the level of abandoned projects, there was a report I saw, I think, is it the House of Reps? And we were made to understand we have more than 3-point-something trillion projects that have been abandoned in this country. And in fact, in many instances, it's born out of some people thinking that until I start my own project, people will not see me doing anything. But like Mr. President said yesterday in his presentation, it is when a project is developed to its completion and handed over to deliver the services it was designed and intended for, that people can begin to get the benefit. It's like a road project. If you come and scrape the road, lay some sand, you are doing it. If you abandon it, people will suffer on that road. But when you complete the road and it is completed and is being put to use, people will now enjoy the road and say, yes, dividend of democracy has been given to us. So the way to go definitely is continuation of projects to make sure that we give priority as much as possible to ongoing projects. This does not mean we may not have new projects.
Okay.
It's just like the pandemic. When the pandemic came on board, we had to go back and revise the budget to make sure we accommodate something new. So this is also a possibility, but let it not be that the entire budget is new while abandoning majority of the projects that are well-intentioned, well-intended, well-packaged, well-designed, but deliberately you just leave them out. That is not good for our
I was going to ask you if it will mean there will be no new projects, but you already gave me that answer.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you now, the president is only one person in the budget process, and then the National Assembly is another.
Yeah.
Then we have the MDAs, the ministries, departments, and agencies who are supposed to go through the implementation of these projects.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what are those things in place to make sure that there's proper implementation of the 2021 budget and even the 2020 that we're still in?
Yeah, well, I think first, let me say that we need to commend Mr. President because for the very first time, he has to make a pronouncement last year that no minister should travel, no heads of parastatals or agencies should travel until and unless they've defended their budget. Okay. Now, the experience in the past has been that committees will come out with their own timetable for budget defense. And you get letters upon letters from chief executives, some not even letter. You just fix the date, you communicate to them, and they will not come. And that contributes in the delay. But this time around, Mr. President was very emphatic, and he has made it very clear that all MDAs, heads of ministries, departments, and agencies, must personally, and I think I remember yesterday when he said this, I noted, in fact, I repeated the word again, personally, which is very instructive. Because sometimes the problem is some chief executives will send their own deputies. And when the deputy comes in and questions are being asked, the deputy is helpless. He can't defend it. So I think that is why the emphasis on personally that Mr. President said yesterday is instructive and important to us. If MDAs, I'm sure by next week, the appropriation committee will have come out with the roadmap for how we're going to work on the 2021 proposals. And so when the timetable is out, our hope and desire is to see the ministries, departments, and agencies, particularly ministers, because there are some ministers that whenever the National Assembly asks them to come, they tend not to appear. They will send their palm sex and whatnot. I don't think when they do that, to my mind, they are going against the directive of their principal, Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief. If they appear personally, that will ensure the process goes smooth. All questions that will be answered, that will be asked, can be answered by them appropriately. And so at the end of the day, we are able to do the needful in terms of the scrutiny that the National Assembly has to do in arriving at what is a final budget that we can lay before our members, pass it, and then send it to Mr. President for assent.
All right. The economy, talking about Nigeria's economy, has been projected to relapse again into another recession very soon. What is the legislature doing in terms of plan for it in case it comes? Is there any plan?
Well, I think to my mind, we're already in recession, and I don't think we've witnessed growth yet. Okay. All that we're trying to do is to get the country's economy back onto a path. And I think this particular budget, earlier you said is ambitious. The ambition of this budget is to give us a 3% growth. And I think if we can work things out, ensure that the budget comes in at the right time, and we're able to work on the revenue side, because like Mr. President urged the National Assembly, which we have actually started doing, because when we are passing the medium-term expenditure framework, that was one of the major considerations. And I think it also informed the decision in Mr. President's speech yesterday that all MDAs must begin to focus on revenue generation.
You talked about working things out. What exactly do you mean by the National Assembly is working things out?
Of course, the process of the budget defense is a process,
okay.
isn't it? That's all I'm talking about. In essence, when we come out with the timetable, okay, and the MDAs are asked to come and defend their budget, of course they should be able to come and defend their budget. And in defending their budget, questions around revenue, especially those of them that have revenue generation, they should be ready to answer. And that is why it is important for the heads, the permanent heads, not somebody deputizing, should be involved in the budget process so that when questions are asked around those things, they will be able to provide appropriate answers.
Okay, the President of the Senate talked about the National Assembly approving 4.28 trillion naira borrowing for the 2021 budget that we're talking about. And he also suggests that the federal government can get the build, operate and transfer, the BOT, as well as public-private partnership in order to generate revenue to fund the budget. What do you make of this?
No, I don't think that is the intendment. What he's saying is that rather than look at borrowing alone, we are borrowing actually to develop infrastructure, like roads, maybe some very massive infrastructural projects like even the rail and even the hydropower. So rather than borrow, he is saying you can use a public-private partnership model of either build, operate and transfer or other models that are appropriate. So that with that, when you are doing the build, operate and transfer model, for example, in essence, you are agreeing that private sector A or B has the resources. You hand over the project to them, they build it, operate it, get their funds back, and then they transfer back the asset when they are done, based on what has been agreed.
The Senate has also approved the 4.28 trillion naira.
That is the borrowing plan.
The borrowing plan, yes.
That is the borrowing plan. That is part of the fiscal strategy paper and the medium-term expenditure framework.
Okay, just tell us in summary what you expect to see in terms of making sure that the budget, the 2021 budget is, achieves the intention that it is set to do.
Well, I think we'll come back now to the 2020 budget because one of the highlights of the 2021 is for us to continue. And I think, like Mr. President said, in the main capital, approval or releases have been up to 50%. So I'm sure by the time the MDAs are coming, our projection is that perhaps we may have up to 70 to 80% implementation. That will get and infer from information that we'll get when the budget defense starts. Now, when that happens, what it means is, for example, hypothetically, I'm not confirming that this is what is going to be, but hypothetically, let's say we have up to 80% implementation. In essence, funds have been released up to 80%, which means 20% is what we're expecting. So the expectation will now be that MDAs will have been able to carry over 20% workload from this, which means they will now be able to, by 2021, will be able to complete many projects that are actually at maybe 70, 80% completion. Now, when you complete those projects, it means you are opening up areas of economic activity. That will help the economy. And I think the emphasis and also the need to empower the small and medium enterprises, just like one of my colleagues was saying earlier in your reportage here, it's crucial to what is going to happen. Because when you strengthen that layer of our economy, you are able to stimulate the economy back to the more formal sector.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Aliu Sabi Abdullahi, who is the Deputy Chief Whip of the Senate. Thank you for your time with us.
Thank you for having me.
On
My
Business
pleasure.
Express.
Thank you.
Global GDP is projected to rise around $121 trillion in 2019 to more than $258 trillion in 2045, based on 2011 purchasing power parity. This is contained in the 2020 World Oil Outlook 2045 by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. Despite the huge drop in 2020, OPEC forecasts that global primary energy demand will continue growing in the medium and long term. Leah Katumba Batunde completes that report.
As experts continue to look at post-COVID-19 situations around the world, OPEC says the global economy in 2045 will be more than double the size it was in 2019. global primary energy demand is forecast to increase from 289 million barrels of oil equivalent per day in 2019 to 361 in 2045, representing an average growth rate of 0.9% per annum over the forecast period. In the 25 years projections, oil will remain the fuel with the largest share of the global energy mix, assuming that the COVID-19 pandemic is largely overcome by next year. Oil demand is projected to partly recover in 2021. OPEC in the outlook says natural gas will be the fastest growing fossil fuel between 2019 and 2045, and coal will be the only primary fuel for which demand declines between 2019 and 2045, and this is as a result of shutdowns and replacement of coal-fired power plants in the OECD region, coupled with the introduction of more energy-efficient technologies in developing regions as carbon abatement is prioritized. Oil demand growth is expected to recover during the medium term. Annual increments will be relatively high, especially in 2022 and 2023. In the long term, oil demand is projected to reach 109.1 million barrels per day by 2045. However, global oil demand will plateau during the second half of the outlook period. Cumulative oil-related investment requirements over the long term will be $12.6 trillion. Asia-Pacific remains the most important crude oil importing region throughout the forecast period, with imports rising more than 6 million barrels per day. OPEC's World Outlook is part of the organization's commitment to market stability.
Nigeria's Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala has been in the news for vying for the World Trade Organization's top position. Now, the federal government is making last-minute consultations and lobbying delegates for her candidacy. Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment Niyi Adebayo told NTA that she is the most qualified for the job and expressed optimism she would deliver on expectations.
Well, I'm very optimistic. We have been working hard. Our candidate has been working hard. She's been all over the world. She's talked to all sorts of different heads of states, ambassadors, trade commissioners. I've spoken to many of my colleagues. I've written to every single Minister for Trade in the world. I've spoken to many of them. I've spoken to ambassadors. In some cases, I've spoken to heads of state. So we have embarked on a massive campaign on her behalf. Luckily, it's easy to campaign for her because she has the background, she has the pedigree, she has the qualifications. So whenever we talk to people, that's the first thing they say to us: oh, your candidate is more than qualified for the post. And many people have pledged their support. So we are optimistic that going forward, we will see it through to the end.
Similarly, the chairperson of the African Union and president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, has thrown weight behind the candidature of Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala as the contest for the WTO Director General enters the last lap. While congratulating Dr. Okonjo-Iweala for being the first African woman to stand for election and reach the final stage of selection for the WTO DG post, Ramaphosa in a statement said he had no doubt that she has the credentials and capability to restore order in an otherwise turbulent multilateral trading system. President Ramaphosa encouraged all member states of the African Union to rally behind Okonjo-Iweala during the final round of nominations, which will see in the history of the WTO the appointment of the first female Director General, and most likely and preferably one coming from the African continent. In this regard, President Ramaphosa has expressed his optimism that other regions and countries will also unite and support the African candidate. And back home, stocks dipped further Thursday as investors lose 46.06 billion naira amid positive market breadth, characterized by profit-taking. At the end of Friday's session, the all-share index dipped by 0.46% to 28,415.31 points. Market capitalization closed at 14.8 trillion naira. 384 million shares valued at 3.9 billion naira were traded in 5,759 deals. Keverton, Zenith Bank and FBN Holdings were the most active stocks in the course of the day. And next is a brief on the performance of markets around the globe as put together by Bosede Ebo.
Global stocks resumed early trade of 9th October mixed. In Africa, Tunisia's Tunidex, South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40 and Namibia's overall index opened positive. Ghana's GSA Composite was marginally positive, while Nairobi's all-share dipped 1%. European markets edged higher in early trade Friday as investors monitor talks on fresh coronavirus relief package stateside. Stocks in mainland China surged as they returned to trade on Friday from holidays, although investors continue to focus on ongoing developments regarding potential new fiscal stimulus stateside. Shanghai Composite jumped 1.68% to 3,272.08. Hang Seng Index closed 0.31% lower at 24,119.13, and Nikkei also dipped 0.12%. U.S. stock futures also rose early Friday as Wall Street continued to search for clarity surrounding a new potential stimulus bill. Bosede Ebo, Business Express.
And with that report, we've come to the end of this edition of Business Express. Be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on NTA's channels. You can be sure to communicate with us on Twitter. The handle is at NTA News Now. And don't forget to use the hashtag BizX. Business Express returns next week, Monday. I am Muplang Dakok saying, stay safe.